look better on person than I do on camera. But we are going to be talking about dementia and communication today. And life is essentially about communication. We use communication to connect with people, to tell them what we need, to understand their needs. And we often think communication is just about talking, about what's coming out of our mouth, what we're saying. But really, that's the smallest part of effective communication that there is. Sorry, I have to figure out how to change my PowerPoint now that this came up. My screen is sharing, yes? There we go. Okay. Perfect. So did you know that 55% of our communication is actually our body language that we're using? So without me even saying a word, I'm going to give you 3 different facial expressions, and you can kind of let me know what they are, or you can type in the screen box, or you can chat with people that you're with. So if I came up to you and I went, what emotion am I communicating to you without even saying a word? Or if I was like, oh, or if I'm like, you know, happy to see you, I'm glad you're here, I'm looking at you, I'm with you. So without even speaking a word, I've just communicated 3 different emotions, very different emotions, just through my body language alone. And our body language is head to toe. It's where our feet are pointing, what our hands are doing, if they're on our hips, if you have your hands on your hips and you have your finger up, that's very powerful body language. 38% of our communication is tone and pitch. It's how we're saying our words. So if I said, I'm fine, or if I said, I'm fine, or if I said, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Same words, tone and pitch is completely different. They communicate very different emotions, and you're going to react differently to each one. So only 7% of the words that our communication are the words that we say. So if you look over to the side, let's eat grandma. Let's eat grandma. I'm going to assume that no one actually thought I wanted to eat grandma. It's exactly the same words. And if you really pay attention, let's eat grandma. That could be cannibalism, or for let's eat grandma is telling grandma to come and eat. So the words aren't actually as important, because even how I say them, you're kind of going to get the message. So only 7% of our communication comes down to what we say. It's how we say it and how our body language is. So communication in general is hard enough, but then when we throw things in, like dementia, it makes it even harder. And with dementia, there are 5 general truths that we sort of know about dementia, or that we should remember about dementia. The first one is that at any given time, 2 or more parts of the brain are actively dying. You're having the cells shrink, they're pulling away from each other. Dementia is progressive. That means it will get worse over time. Dementia is chronic. There is no cure. Once those brain cells have died, we can't bring them back to life. So if someone says, take a velvet elk pill and it'll cure your dementia, there actually is no cure for dementia. We might be able to halt the progression a little bit through various medications, but it is chronic. The other thing is it's both structural and chemical within the brain. So the structural part of it is you have those cells, and the cells, so they're normally here, they're very close to each other. This cell needs to communicate with this cell. And then as they start to die, they kind of shrink and they pull away from each other. That's the structural part. The chemical part is there's fluid that usually goes from one cell to the other that communicates the messages. That's how our brain works. And then when you get dementia, that fluid, the chemical aspect of it changes a little bit, as well as you produce less of it. So not only do you have now these cells that have shrunk and pulled away from each other, but the fluid that's going is a little different, and it's a little less, and it has so much more space. So it might go to a cell over here. And if the message that's supposed to go to this cell ends up with this cell over here, you are going to get a completely different message. So dementia is both structural and chemical. The other thing is that dementia is also fluid. And by fluid, I mean abilities can come and go with dementia from day to day, from minute to minute, from hour to hour, from week to week. This is very challenging for caregivers because sometimes we think, God, just yesterday they were able to go to the bathroom by themselves. And today they've had 3 accidents. Like, what's going on here? They might be, are they attention seeking? What's wrong with them? Are they doing it on purpose? But it's not. It's because of that chemical aspect. They might be producing better brain fluid. They might be have had a better sleep. It's going to change and it's going to go back and forth. You're going to have really good days. You're going to have really bad days. Now, also, there are extra barriers to communication when we throw in dementia. So one of the barriers that changes is vision changes. And vision, it's really important to understand how the vision changes when you have dementia. So for example, if you were to put your arms out to your side and wiggle your fingers, then slowly bring your arms in to where you can see your fingers wiggling using your peripheral vision. That it slowly goes in as we get older. So a young person might have their arms back here and can still see, whereas someone, it might be a little bit less, a little bit less, a little bit less, like this. So about mid-stage dementia, people get what we call scuba vision. So their vision is, it kind of like is you have a scuba mask on, and that's what they see. They don't see things quite as well. That really changes how you interpret your environment. Someone's talking to you off the side, you're not going to be able to see them. You're not going to be able to get their body language. So that's going to change. As dementia progresses, it goes to binocular vision, so even less peripheral vision. When they do that, you can see, you can focus on one thing and one thing only. You can talk to someone, or you can look down and eat a meal. You can't do two things at one time. So communication, it's really important to remember that. And then as it really progresses, you go down to monocular vision where you have, a very small line of sight. It's really important because understanding someone's visual changes that are actually occurring because of dementia. I'm just going to give you a little example here. I've enlisted my daughter as a helper. So she's going to come and sit here. Okay, and she's going to go into binocular vision. Okay, so if I'm saying she has dementia and I'm coming up and I, pop my head right in front of her, even though we practiced this, her and I, and she's done this before and she knew I would be popping in front of her. Now it changes because your peripheral vision has changed. So if I've startled her, her brain now goes into that fight, flight, or freeze mode, and she's not going to be able to hear what I'm saying, because when you go into that fight, flight, or freeze mode, your brain floods with cortisol, and you're not going to be able to process information as well. Another thing that's really going to affect things is hearing changes. Not only do we just naturally sort of lose a little bit of hearing as we age, but when you have dementia, the temporal lobes, which is where your auditory processing is you're not going to be able to comprehend words. A lot of times I have people, they're like, my hearing, it's just not working. My hearing aid isn't working. And we'll check it. Everything's working fine. The hearing aid is working fine, but they haven't been able to understand that the way their brain is processing the words they hear has also changed. So those are really major changes that are going to affect communication. Then we have the inability to comprehend, process, and most importantly, retain information when you have dementia. So you can tell someone, yep, we're going to go to the doctor's tomorrow. And even if they caught the comprehension, they might not have been able to process it and they can't retain it. So the next day when you're like, let's get ready, I told you we're going to the doctor's, and they're like, you never said anything about going to the doctor. And you're like, yes, I did. You said, yeah, I'll be ready for, and you get very frustrated. But they're not able to retain or process or even comprehend exactly what you've been saying. Another thing is they're unable to articulate. So they can't find that. What is it? The thing with there's when you're talking and there's a whole bunch of them and there's a period at the end. They can't find the word. That's the word. They have a hard time finding the word. So they start describing. Now, Everybody forgets words. That is a normal part of aging. So if you just went, oh my gosh, I do that all the time, that is normal. But it's when they cannot find the word that they actually want, or they use a different word to describe an object. Like, can I have the faddle? Please, it's not that hard. Just hand me the faddle. They're substituting words and you have no idea. You're like, what are you even talking about? And then they lose train of thought. So they're not able to follow a conversation. And I just don't mean like you go into the kitchen, you're like, what did I come in here for? Again, that's normal aging. Everyone's going to experience it. But when they lose the train of thought and they don't even end up in the kitchen, they end up outside. That's the kind of thing. They're not able to follow through. That's a big thing. So when we want to speak sensibly, we have to think about our words to convey that message or ideal. Or our idea, sorry. We have to formulate them into a sentence according to grammatical rules that we have. We have to then use our lungs, our vocal cords, and our mouth to create the different sounds that we want. There's regions in your frontal lobe, your temporal lobe, your parietal lobe that formulate what you want to say. That you use the motor cortex in your frontal lobe that enables you to actually speak the words. Most of this language-related brain activity is occurring in the left side of your brain. So when you read something, you're reading a text message or you're reading a book or reading a newspaper, the first thing you need to do is detect the words. You need to see them. So that's, goes in through your eyes. Your eyes then send messages to your occipital lobe, which is in the very back of your head. And as far as brain transmission goes, that is a long, long way. So it's a very complex process. And this involves many, many regions of the brain. So when you're detecting text, it uses optic nerves, it uses nerve bundles, it delivers signals from the eyes to the cortex, the visual cortex. If you're listening to someone who's reading out loud, then you're using your auditory cortex not far from your ears. So there's a system of regions in the brain towards the back and the middle of the brain that help you interpret the text that you're hearing. So these include things like the angular gyrus, the Wernicke's area, the insular cortex, the basal ganglia, the cerebellum. Brain imaging methods have shown us lately that there is so much more of our brain involved in language processing than we ever even thought before. So we now know that numerous regions of the brain and every major lobe in the brain is involved in our ability to produce and to comprehend language. Now, you don't actually need to know all the areas. I just simply wanted to give you an understanding of how much of your brain is involved in that communication process. So when you are communicating with someone with dementia, there are several tips that you can remember that might help you with this. And they might seem really basic, but especially if you're a caregiver and you're frustrated and you're exhausted and you just want something to be easy, remembering these few little tips might make a very big difference. The first one is use a caring attitude. So people retain their feelings and their emotions even though they might not understand exactly what's being said. So it's really important to always maintain their dignity and their self-esteem. And we want to communicate through emotions. This is very, very important. You want to be flexible and allow plenty of time for a response, because when they're taking in information, all of those parts of the brain are now trying to work extra hard and they can't process it as quickly as someone who has a brain that doesn't have cells that are shrinking. So when you're talking to someone and you want them to remember an appointment or you want to get something across, you're going to say something to them and look them in the eyes and give them 10 seconds to respond. It feels like forever. I'm going to give you a very quick example. We have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. It might take them that long. And even for me, I'm sitting here thinking I should start talking again. It's very awkward to have that long pause, but they really do need that time. And it is amazing how many times I've gone up to a resident and something as simple as, hey, how are you today? given them enough time, and about 7 seconds and they're like, I'm fine, because I gave them the time to process and respond. So it's very important for people to have that extra time. When appropriate, you can use touch to keep a person's attention, to communicate feelings of warmth and affection. You can use what we call hand under hand. I'll give you an example of that in a little bit, ways to keep people focused on you. So if you're talking to them, depending on who you are to them, you could put, your hand on their arm, you could hold their hand, just a way to gently draw their attention back to you. And really, we only touch people that we care about. So when you're touching them in, a safe way, they're going to respond better to you. So again, that touch stimulates emotion, and emotion is much more effective than words ever will be. Also, keep your sentences short and simple, focusing on one idea at a time. Too many facts, too many details, too many ideas is confusing, and that's a surefire way to exacerbate memory loss. So for an example, if you're saying, okay, let's stand up, we're going to go to the kitchen and we're going to do the dishes, then we're going to go for a walk and we'll get some ice cream on the way. All they might have caught was stand up, go for ice cream. And then you're trying to get them to do dishes or go to the bathroom or something. They can't retain. That was 5 bits of information that we gave them. They cannot keep that information in their head. So we're going to be, okay, let's stand up. People have stood up. Let's go to the bathroom and go to the bathroom. Let's go for a walk. Okay, let's put our shoes on. So 1-step instructions, one at a time, never more than one. Also, you want to use orientating names or labels whenever you can. This is critical because even though you maybe are someone's son or daughter or spouse, or you work with them, you're their caregiver, you work with them every single day, maybe 5 or 6 times a day, you remember them, but we forget they don't necessarily remember us. Their memory, if say you're their son or daughter, they might remember you as 10 years old, as a teenager, as a young adult. They're not going to remember you as someone in their 50s. So you want to tell them, give them the information. Hi, Mom, it's your daughter, Trisha. That kind of thing. You want to do that so that you're preserving their dignity. If you're going into someone's room, you're like, hi, I'm Trisha. I'm going to do this with you today. Give them that information. Don't say, hey, do you remember me? Because that's just me. We know they have dementia. They're probably not going to remember you, or they're going to go into that socially appropriate chit chat. Oh, I remember you, even if they don't, because they don't want to hurt your feelings. So you're walking down the street with your husband and you run into a lifelong friend. Don't just assume he knows who that person is. Give him the information. Bob, you remember Mary, right? That's a socially appropriate way of giving them the information, because then he can say, oh, I know Mary. Even if he doesn't, it gives him a way to save his dignity in a socially appropriate manner. People with dementia do remember the automatic autonomic reflexes, and part of that is conversating. So have you ever been to dinner out at a restaurant and a waiter sits or gives you your plate and says, enjoy your meal, and you go, yeah, you too, and you're like, I mean, thank you. It's just that socially appropriate chit chat. That's just sort of what popped in your mind that felt appropriate at the time. Happens a lot. I'm going to show you now a little bit of the hand under hand, how we're going to go into that touch part of things, if appropriate touch. If you're having a hard time getting to someone to connect with you, hand under hand is really great. Again, my assistant, you want to stand up, Callie? So really, you're only going to see our hands here. So normally you want to be about 6 feet apart for this. You want to be head on. You want to be looking them in the eyes. And we're going to go on social reflexes first. So I'm going to put my hand out and I'm going to give her time to respond, to process this. Now, she's putting her hand out, but I'm not going to go into a handshake because there's skill fingers and there's strength fingers. We lose skill very quickly with dementia, but we retain our strength, and she could hurt me. So instead of shaking her hand, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go kind of makes like a little butterfly, and then I'm going to wrap around. This part right here of your hand It is a pressure point. It actually releases chemicals that reduce cortisol in your brain. So what I'm doing is I'm relaxing her. I can put my hand over hers. She's going to be calm. She's given me permission to do this. And if she's not focusing on me, I'm just going to go pump, pump, just nice and gently, pump, pump. And that's going to bring her focus back to me. Thank you, Callie. So hand under hand can be an effective way of keeping someone focused on you while you're trying to communicate with them. If you want more information on that, go ahead, Google Teepa Snow, hand under hand. She does an amazing explanation of what hand under hand is, why it works, and how to do it. I just showed it briefly for you here. In another presentation coming up, we do go into that a little bit more, but that's not today's focus. So then we have body language. So body language is important. We might need to use, hand gestures, facial expressions to make ourselves understood. That's because in different parts of our brain retain different skills. The right side is more of how we interpret people, and the left side is our actual language part of things. So using hand gestures, you're working with a side of the brain that's a little bit stronger. Dementia affects the left side of the brain much more quickly and much more devastatingly than it does the right. So people will lose language skills before they lose sort of that rhythm, that reading people ability. So facial expressions, very, very important. Pointing or demonstrating. If you want someone to take a drink of water, you're trying to get them to take a drink, you're going to come, you're going to approach them from the front. Remember, peripheral vision, always come directly on, start about 6 feet away, and you're going to be bringing a glass of water for you and for them. And you're going to go up and you're going to use one word, drink. And you're like, drink. You're going to show them, you're going to demonstrate. Drink, hand them the glass. After you have shown them and not just said, hey, Mary, are you thirsty today? Do you want something to drink? Too much, too many words, too much for them to process. All they're getting is drinking the glass. Okay, I'll take it out and drink. You can get people to drink a lot more, and dehydration is really always a big, big problem with someone with dementia because they're not understanding the words that we're saying to them. So give them the example. You want them to brush their teeth? Give them, show them, demonstrate how to brush their teeth. Remember to approach from the front. Again, the peripheral vision. Smile. Smile can communicate so much more. When you smile at someone, if you smile at a stranger, like, oh, they're friendly, you automatically see them as someone who's nice. That's what your brain is going to tell you. If they're smiling, they're nice. So when you're approaching someone, make sure that you smile. And it sounds really simple. Not everybody is a smiler. For me, I'm a natural smiler. That is my go-to facial expression. So I'm kind of often always smiling. If I'm not smiling, something's wrong. But for some people, it's hard. So you might have to practice smiling a little bit. Or when you go up, smile, a wink, something, just show them that you're friendly and you're safe, especially if they're having a hard time recognizing you. Make sure the environment is free from distractions. So no competing noises, such as the TV being on, the radio being on, dogs barking. If you're in a facility and you're in someone's room, just think of all the noises that could be going on in the hallway. There could be people talking, there could be bells ringing, there could be beeping, there could be phones ringing. All of those things are going to take the person's focus off of you, and you want to keep their focus off on you. And again, make eye contact with that person. You want to make sure you're looking directly in their eyes. When you're looking at someone, they feel it's sort of an automatic autonomic reflex to maintain that eye contact and focus on you. How often when you're talking to a child, you get right down on their level and you make eye contact with them. You can even hold their face and you're like, look at me, Jenny. You want to make that eye contact. We want to make that eye contact in a socially appropriate, age appropriate kind of way with our residents too. Other things you might want to remember is maintain regular routines. Really important. People thrive on routines, even if they're not always a routine person. If you maintain a routine and don't change their routine, if they used to bath every Sunday at 6 o'clock and trying to get them have a shower on a Tuesday morning, that's really going to be challenging. Try and maintain their routines as much as you possibly can. Keep a consistent approach. So you want everyone to be approaching that person the same way. This is important. If you have someone who has a reactive responsive behavior, or what we used to call an inappropriate behavior, you don't want, one person getting angry at them. You don't want one person getting embarrassed and kind of squeamish. One person saying, "Oh, it's all right," and laughing at it. You want to maintain the same consistent approach so that they're getting the same messages. Because even when you have dementia, you can form new memories. It's just a lot harder. It takes a lot more repetition, and you want to base it off of emotion. So if someone is doing something that's say they're taking food and throwing it on the floor, you would want to just say, that makes it really hard when I have to clean up the floor. You're working on emotion, because then they're thinking, oh, well, I like her. I don't want to make more work for her. But again, over and over and over again. So keeping a consistent approach, very, very important. Make sure you include the person in discussions about them. Don't talk about them like they're not there. That's it. They are still there, and that's dehumanizing, and they lose their dignity. So you want to make sure that you're talking with that person, not about that person. And it's hard because it's sort of our natural go-to a little bit to, if it's just too much work, I'm just going to tell the doctor all these things rather than ask them. But instead, when you're at a medical appointment, say, "Bob, would you like to tell the doctor about the heart palpitations, or would you like me to?" Giving them that option, it just makes it so much easier, because then he's given you permission to talk to the doctor when he's in the room about him. If you can, ask your loved one in a specific way how they want to be helped. This is primarily something you would want to do earlier in the dementia process. Okay, you're having a hard time finding a word. Would you like me to give you the word, or do you want me to wait until you found the word? Knowing what they're going to respond to is really, really important. And again, like I said before, later in the disease, use mostly hand gestures, visual cues, pointing to an object, drink, that kind of thing. There are definitely things you never want to do when you're communicating with someone who has dementia. The very first thing that you never, ever want to do is argue with them. That is just going to create a whirlwind of problems for you. This is how what we describe as living their reality. When we live their reality, we want to visualize or try and understand what they are thinking, what they are hearing, what they are seeing, because for them, that is the absolute truth. If you tell them, "No, you're wrong," they're going to be like, "I am not wrong. I am an adult. I know what I've just seen. I know what I feel. I know what I need." And then all of a sudden you become this crazy person who's trying to distort their view. Like, what's wrong with you? So never, ever argue with them. Years ago, when I had first started in one of my first jobs, I was at a supportive living facility. And 23 years ago, when I was in school, Alzheimer's and dementia was talked a lot about memory loss, not about the reactive responsive behaviors like we're understanding it's a lot more about now. So this one lady, very sweet, loving lady, she was wandering around, and I'm like, "Oh, are you looking for something?" Because she's moving questions. She's like, "I can't find my keys. I've lost them." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, no problem. We're going to find them. If I find them, I'll bring them to you." So I was searching. A couple hours later, I did find her keys. So I went up to her room and I'm like, "Look, I found your keys," thinking she's going to be so happy with me. She wasn't. She was furious because I stole her keys. She's like, "You stole them." And I was so taken aback, and I was young and I was new, and I hadn't had all the experience that I have had in the last 23 years. And so my initial response was, I didn't steal your keys. I found them for you. You asked me to help you look for them. And she looks at me like dead in the eye and she's like, you stole them. I saw you come in my room. I knew you were looking for something. I was so worried. I was so worried that, the people at work would think I actually did go in her room and steal her keys. I was panicked and I got defensive. And now looking back, she was confabulating, because with her dementia progression, she didn't remember that she'd asked me to look for her keys. So when I brought them to her, her initial reaction was, my keys aren't here. How did you get them? You must have stolen them. Her brain did something, it's actually called confabulation. She had an end result that I had her keys. So her brain filled in the gaps for her. And by doing that, she would accuse me of coming in her room, taking her keys and stealing them. She would have passed a lie detector test. She would have 100% passed that lie detector test because she truly believed I'd stolen her keys. Much better response would have been for me just to say something like, I'm very, very sorry. And just sort of walk away, let her deal with that, not be, not get defensive, because that's going to happen a lot. People are going to do that. Another thing you don't want to do is order a person around, because first off, when someone orders you around, what's your initial reaction? Like, go to the bathroom. You need to have a shower. You need to get dressed. You need to go to bed. We get our hackles up. We get a little bit defensive. We get a little bit resentful. Really interesting fact is, did you know that the way dementia regresses the brain, so the way dementia progresses, is very similar to the way a child or a baby's brain starts to develop. So they're going to lose skills the same way or a similar way as a child would develop those skills. Now, we never want to treat an adult or a person living with dementia like a child. They're an adult. They deserve that dignity. They deserve that respect. But just understanding that they will lose those skills, and that we never look at a child and think, oh, well, they can't do this. Instead, we look at a child and we're like, look what they can do now. We want to have that same fulfillment by what someone who's living with dementia has as well. Don't tell the person what they can't do. So don't think of chickens. I'm going to guess that the very first thing you thought of when I said don't think of chickens was a chicken. I remember when I was about 5 or so, my mom, she had told me, if you're outside and there's a pole and it's freezing out, never, ever, ever stick your tongue on that pole. Your tongue will stick to it and you'll have to rip it off, and you'll be, you could lose half of your tongue. Well, guess what the very first thing I did when I saw a pole in the middle of winter? Absolutely. Stuck my tongue right to the pole. My tongue really did stick to it, really did have to pull it off. I, to this day, couldn't tell you why, even though she said, don't stick your tongue to a pole, I still wanted to do it. It's just something about the way our brain works. Tell someone they can't do something, a lot of them want to do it. So when you're working with someone with dementia, never tell them they can't do that. Instead, give them options of what they can do. Focus on what they can do. If they're saying something like, oh, I want to go for a walk, I want to go outside, don't be like, you can't go outside, you're going to get lost, I can't trust you by yourself. Well, that's going to, yes, I can. I'm an adult. I can go for a walk if I want to. So instead, give them an alternative. Offer them a different suggestion. Something like, oh, I love going for walks with you. Let me finish this and we can go together. You're not saying no. You're giving them, the emotion of, this person wants to spend time with me. I'll wait for them. Or something like, what really needs to be done? The leaves in the backyard desperately need to be raked, and you're the only one who can do it properly. Building them up, giving them an alternative. Never be condescending, using that tone of voice. And sometimes I hear this in care facilities. You want to make sure that you're making sure your tone of voice is appropriate, that it's respectful. Being a caregiver is really hard. It is really, really challenging. It's frustrating, it's exhausting. And past communication styles play a huge role when we're talking to someone, especially when we're at our wits' end. So if we're talking to a spouse and we're upset, we're frustrated, we're at our wits' end, we just don't have the energy anymore, we're going to revert to argument context. I told you, you need to. So we just want to make sure that we're not being condescending to the people that we're communicating with. There was an actual study done on caregivers for people who are living with dementia. And so these were usually a spouse or a child. And it was found that they had consistent high levels of cortisol in their body. So cortisol is a stress hormone. When we get stressed, it floods our brain. Cortisol is good if we're, like being chased by a tiger or something, because we need that cortisol because we need to run away. But when you're living with huge amounts of cortisol in your brain all day, every day, you're not able to get rid of that cortisol. You cannot be the best caregiver that you want to be. And the reason we're caregivers is because we want to be caregivers. So after the end of that study, what they did was they set a reminder for the caregivers to take 10 deep belly breaths. The yoga style, belly out, belly in. You want to aim for 6 breaths a minute. You want to exhale longer than it takes you to inhale. You want to do that 10 times a day. They found that when caregivers, because they had to set the timers because as caregivers, we're going to forget to care about ourselves. So when you have the timer set, they did that 10 times a day, and they found that those cortisol levels completely leveled out. So when we feel we're getting stressed, when we want to be, a little bit condescending, that kind of thing, make sure that you are taking those deep, relaxing breaths. It will physically reset your brain. It's very, very important. Make sure you ask them questions, but not questions that rely on really good memory skills. So, you want to give them information instead of making them recall information. So never say, "Hey, Mom, do you remember me? Mary, do you remember me?" Maybe should I remember them? Why can't I remember you? You look familiar. Don't do that. That's just mean. Or even worse yet, "Hey, Mom, which one am I?" That's just cruel. We want to give them information. Never, ever ask for it. "Hi, Mom, it's Trish. Hi, Dad, it's Jack." Give them that information. Don't set yourself up for failure. Don't set them up for failure. Never rush them for an answer. Give them that 10 seconds that we talked about earlier, that full 10 seconds to respond. Eye contact, smiling. Don't make them feel pressured. Make sure that you are giving them, never rush them for information. Please refrain from quizzing a person with dementia. And I see this a lot. "Oh, do you know where you are? Do you know who I am?" This approach causes a lot of stress. You're going to flood the brain with cortisol, that fight, flight, or fright, and then they're not going to be able to communicate. You're literally causing them to freeze with anxiety. Give them the information. Don't quiz them. Don't ask open-ended questions. This is really difficult. So if I asked you, "Oh, what would you like to drink from Starbucks?" You'll eventually come up with it because your brain, it's an open-ended question. Your brain can figure that out. But when you have dementia, those processes are damaged. So we need to be asking them guided questions. So instead of saying, "What do you want to drink?" you're going to give them choices. "Would you like something hot to drink or something cold to drink?" Something hot. Do you want coffee or tea? You want tea. Do you want black tea or an herbal tea? Black tea. Do you want cream or no cream? Do you want sugar or no sugar? It's going to take you a few extra seconds, yes, but you're going to be able to include them in the conversation by giving them 2 options, not a plethora of options. So that's really important to remember that. Then we want to validate people. It's validation therapy. You can look that up a little bit more, but way back again, when I first started, it was a lot of reality orientating. "No, you live here now. No, you can't go home. You live here now. No, all your stuff is here. Your house has been sold." We don't want to do that anymore. We realize that this is their reality. We have to meet them where they're at. So validation therapy teaches rather than trying to bring the person with dementia back to our reality, which is never going to happen. It is more important to positively enter their reality. This way, you can develop empathy with the person, you can build trust and a sense of security, reduces anxiety both for you and for them, which is really important. For example, if a person with dementia is waiting for her children to get off the bus, or she's frantic, I need to get home, I need to pick up my kids. You don't say, oh, your kids graduated school. They're 60 years old. You're 86. How old do you think your kids are? Why would you think they're in school? No, you don't need to go. Instead, you want to validate her feelings because she's expressing something to you. So, you want to ask her questions. Oh, how old are your children? How many children do you have? Do you have boys or girls or some of each? What are your children's names? Are they in any activities? What do you want? What do you like to cook for them? Discuss her emotions. A lot of times, just after talking with someone, about their children or about their home, when they're, I want to go home, I want to go home, by talking about it and giving them a chance to express that emotion, they can move past that. And suddenly they've almost sort of orientated themselves a little bit and that anxiety is gone. So just keep asking them questions. Questions are wonderful about their emotion. Then there is music. Music is something I use almost daily when I'm at work because music is amazing and it can be used by anyone at any time. I have Spotify on my phone and I can develop different playlists for different residents. Of course, my daughter has her own playlists. Everyone likes a different kind of music. All you have to do is kind of start at the beginning and develop a playlist for people. Learn what their likes are, what their dislikes in music are. It's really interesting because dementia affects the left side of the brain much more devastatingly than it does the right. Left is logic, it's our language. The right is our rhythm, it's our music, it's our prayer, it's poetry. The right side, and the fact that someone with dementia often retains the right much longer, it's a gift for us. So we want to use that, and we can use that to embrace their quality of life. That's why someone who has dementia, even though they're completely nonverbal, they might be able to sing a song from beginning to end. They can answer things like an apple a day. How many of you just said keeps the doctor away? Once bitten, twice shy. The Lord is my Bible verses. Mary had a, or you are my. A lot of people know that song. They recall that from the right side of their brain. So even though they can't have a logical conversation, they can get those kinds of things out. Another thing that's really interesting is once you've stimulated the right side of the brain and you sort of get the juices flowing, sometimes the left side of the brain will work even better. With this pandemic, we've had to do a lot of really creative thinking when it comes to various therapies that we do. And I remember one of the SLPs that I was working with, he's like, hey, Trish, I have to do a swallowing assessment on this one resident. She's completely nonverbal. And there was a lot of reactive response behaviors. It's very hard to keep her focused, very hard to keep her sitting down for an entire meal. He was at a different site. We had to do it over video, didn't know how she was going to react with the video player going on. So I'm like, yep, I can absolutely do that for you. Set it all up. Went and I spent about an hour with her. And now I had worked a lot with this resident and I had her playlist down pat. We were singing, we were laughing, we were smiling. So then when it came time to do the assessment, she walked with me to the dining table, sat down, ate her food, did everything I asked her that the SLP was asking me to get her to do. And then when she was done, she was up and she left. And it was kind of funny because he's like, I've assessed her before and it's never been this easy. So I said, it's because I sat with her for an hour before and we listened to music and I got that sort of right side nice and prime. So when she was asked to do certain tasks, she was in a more agreeable mood, and also she had a little bit more cognition on the left side because of the music therapy that we had been doing with her. So music therapy, we would can use it for everything, for toileting, for dressing, for bathing, for any sorts of challenges. So you want to start off knowing what a person likes musically. You don't know the person, it's going to be a little bit of trial and error. Needs to be a very positive experience for that person. So knowing that a person's primary sort of emotional attachment to music generally happens between the ages of 15 and the ages of 25. So you want to focus of music that was played in that general era. So if you have no idea what they're going to like, you're going to have to use a lot of trial and error. Play different things for them. Oh, sorry. Play different music for them. Start with a song. If they're, say, 75, you want to look at music generally from 1961 to 1975. Pick the top hits of the time, see how they're reacting. Do they react to country, R&B, rock and roll? Are they tapping their feet? Are they smiling? Lots of times I go and I play music for one particular resident, but I look around and another resident's tapping their foot because they're just enjoying the music. So read body language. Again, that's 55% of communication. Really, really important. Reminiscing and dementia. Reminiscing is an amazing tool. Again, memories in the right side of the brain, emotion in the right side of the brain, rhythm in the right side of the brain. You'll see a lot of reminiscing happening in recreation departments. And it's not because it's easier. It's not because it's something they can do. There's actual therapeutic reasons behind it. When you get people to recall memories, it's very important and very impactful for them. I remember once I was leading a group and son came in to visit with his mom, and instead of taking her out of the group, he just joined her in the group. And I was going through a memory book, so I'm giving different questions. I'm asking people, do you remember when? Does anybody, remember first time you went to school? And his mom started sharing all of this amazing information, and he was laughing, and then he'd go, "Oh, Mom, also, do you remember about?" And then she would laugh. And after the session was done, he came up to me and he was kind of almost a little bit teary-eyed, and he's like, "Just need to say that was the best conversation I'd had with my mom in years," just because she actually shared information. So getting someone to reminisce is very, very, very powerful. Even if they can no longer talk, having things that you can share with them, they will still remember. I remember one of my mom's favorite stories about her mom, and I noticed that my Auntie Grace is on this, so she might laugh a little bit about this too. My mom was talking with her mom, and my grandma had dementia. And so she was kind of almost at that non-verbal phase, didn't say too much. And my mom made a comment because she was talking about her brothers and sisters, and made a comment about, "Oh, Mom, but all of your children were angels. We know that." And my grandma, clear as day, looked at her and said, "Not that I ever knew." And my grandma always had an amazing sense of humor. And to this day, my mom still laughs about that story, because just that reminiscing, talking about her brothers and her sisters and some of the trouble that they got into, innocent trouble they got into as kids, sparked enough in my grandma that she gave her, 5 full words, a full sentence, which is kind of amazing. So you can do things to spark reminiscing, like making a "This Is Your Life" book, a memory book. This is a chronological history for the person living with dementia to help them reminisce, and it provides information for caregivers. This is really important because as caregivers, we want to be able to go in and interact with them. And because you're not always, family's not always there, especially with the pandemic, the more information we have about who that person is, the better we can interact with them. Also helps people, that are coming in for short periods of time to do care for them. You want to include things like letters, postcards, certificates, different memorabilia. A large photo album works great for this. Protective sheets that cover each page. You can use photos. Label the photos. This is really, really important because a lot of times I have these beautiful, beautiful albums and they're done up lovely, but I can't help this person reminisce because I have no names, I have no context, and I can't exactly ask them, oh, who's this? Because they're going to look at me like, I don't know. I want to say, oh, this is your sister Jane. I want to be able to bring that to their attention and encourage their memory. I love bringing photo albums out. I just need more information when we do things like that. Keep the pages clean and simple. This is really, really important because if it's too cluttered, they're not going to be able to focus. So if one topic per page, and only 2 or 3 photos on the page. Don't sort of fill it up with a giant collage. They're not going to be able to focus on that. Collages, really, really hard. Include life reflections, important, funny, proud moments, lifelong habits that they've always had. And don't forget to include this historical landmarks. So marriages, births, major life events, they lived through the war years, any sports accomplishments. It doesn't even have to be their sport accomplishment. If they rooted for a team and they won the World Series and they were at that game, write about that. Pictures don't even have to be specifically of them. It could just be of some of, their team winning that World Series. That's kind of what's really important. Immigration stories. I love hearing how people came to Canada. It is amazing what some people have gone through just to be here. And I love hearing those stories. Another book that you can do for them is the My Life Story book. In this, you want to look at life reflections. This section is definitely explored in conversations. So I am, I was, I did. Those are important things that you're going to want to ask them. This is a process. It's not something you're going to put together. It's going to be put together through a lot of different conversations with them. My family, my home, finding out who their friends were when they were younger. Pets are also really important in this. Some people are very attached to their dog or their cat or their horse or their goat or their chicken. Whatever their amazing pet was, make sure you have things in there. Find out from them, what is your favorite memory of time you spent with your mom, with your dad, with your children, those sorts of things. Special memories of home. Home has a lot of different meanings for someone who has dementia. Home can be where they grew up. Home can be where they raised their family. Home can be where they live now or where they lived right before they moved into a facility. So home is different. When you find out, ask them about their home, you're going to know what area of time they're living in. Also, include a section on how to help me in everyday life. This is going to be great for communication because you know what? Different people want to be helped in very different ways. My personal preferences with helping me with personal care is huge. Do I want someone to help me bathe or do I just want someone to sort of stand to the side and let me do it myself? What position do I like to sleep in? If you put me on my back, I'm never going to fall asleep. I'm a side sleeper. So we need to know all of these little things about and for people. What do I like talking about? What do I hate talking about? What do I hate talking about? Something happy, something really joyful, that kind of thing. I like it when others ask me for help, when others ask me advice. Some people love giving advice. You're really going to want to, ask advice for them all day long. Oh, what looks better here? What would you do? Just ask. What makes me comfortable? This is really important because comfort is a huge, huge thing for reactive responsive behaviors. What makes someone comfortable? What gives you pleasure? Sensory is really important. Do you like a light room? Do you like a dark room? Do you like to be warm? Do you like to be cold? Are you at the stage of your disease where you want to touch all the time? Are there things for you to touch, appropriate things where you're not going to get hurt? Those kinds of things. What do I like to do? When I'm upset, oh, everyone needs this one. When I'm upset, I respond well too, because people everyone gets upset. People living with dementia, get upset faster and more frequently, even if they never used to be that person. So we want to know ahead of time how they respond to certain things so that when they're upset, we can communicate effectively with them. And things that I look forward to, even if I have dementia, I still have hopes and dreams. I still look forward to things, traditions, holidays, seasons. What did I always celebrate? Hanukkah, Easter, Christmas, winter solstice, whatever it is that people like to celebrate, my anniversary, those things are important. Things I want to see, things I hope to do. I always wished, because you know what? Maybe I always wished I hiked Mount Everest. Well, maybe someone who hiked Mount Everest and they can come in and they can tell them all about it, and things I would like to do still. When you get the PowerPoint presentation, there's a link right here that will take you and walk you through making these books for people so that you can almost just print them out. It's a wonderful, very, very helpful link. There's also a set of conversation cards. Sometimes it's hard when we're just trying to sit and talk with someone. How are we going to get them to talk? What am I going to say? Because you just pull a blank because it's a little bit stressful situation. These are wonderful cards. I just compiled them from a whole bunch of different lists that I've been using over the years. You can print them up, you can cut them out, you can put them on a key ring. That's what we do at my office. We all have a key ring, especially for our therapy assistants. So when you're trying to start a conversation, and there's several pages of these, so things like, where did you live when you were growing up? What was the house you grew up in like? And they're going to be like, it was white. Oh, then you're going to start, was it a 1-story house or a 2-story house? Or, what were your brothers like? Oh, they were jerks. Or, oh, my oldest brother was amazing. Just stimulate that emotion, stimulate conversation. You can print them out, give them to people, give them to other caregivers, leave them in their room. And then there's ways that people will respond to communication through our love languages. If anybody has ever read Gary Chapman and the 5 Love Languages, I found this book written by Gary Chapman, Keeping Love Alive as Memories Fade. It is my absolute favorite book because it's using the 5 love languages to communicate with people and understanding how they are still communicating with us, because people who are living with dementia, they want to communicate with you as well. And so sometimes it's up to us to recognize how they're keeping it. So just a brief synopsis of the 5 love languages. The first one is acts of service. Acts of service is the giving of time, doing things for you, doing the dishes. There's a story in the book where this one lady, her act of service her whole life was washing dishes. She took care of her family. She did all the dishwashing. They went out to a restaurant, and after supper she got up and started clearing the dishes from the restaurant table and wanted to take them back and wash them. That's still her communicating, I still love you. This is my act of service for you. When you're sitting down with someone who has dementia and they're eating and they offer you their food, oh, have a bite. It's them giving of themselves. They don't have a lot to give you. So when they offer you something, that's their way of saying, I appreciate you. I love you. I want you to join me. And then there's the act of gift giving. I'm not talking about great, big, huge, expensive gifts. I'm talking about the little tiny things. Anything can be presented as a gift. Look, Mom, I found a house coat. It's so soft. It feels like a hug when you put it on. Or I bought you this, pair of socks. It reminds me of the slippers that Dad got you for Christmas when I was little, and you wore them until they wore out. Anything could be presented as gift. Your meal. Look, I've made, I have your favorite chicken for lunch today. It can be presented as a gift. Then there's physical touch. Babies actually have failure to thrive if they're not touched enough, if they're not hugged, if they're not loved. Seniors can have the exact same thing. They can have failure to thrive. And as we get older, we get touched less and less. It's just clinical touching, personal care, personal hygiene, get in, get out, that kind of thing. So make sure you take the time. It's a hand on a shoulder. If you're brushing their hair, maybe a little bit of a scalp massage. Had this one lady, she was sitting with me, And she sat beside me and reached over, and I started, just sort of playing with her back, because I'm a natural, physical touch is my natural go-to for love language. And she's like, oh, do more, do more, do more, scratch my back. So she had me scratch her back for like 5 minutes and loved every minute of it. We all know how good it feels when you get our back scratched, but when you're 85, 90 years old, not a lot of people going to scratch your back for you. So make sure we're touching. And when they touch us, to understand that's important. Quality time. Be present. Don't be distracted when we're spending that one-on-one time with people. Words of affirmation are another one. That's like, you are amazing. You're the best part of my day. Explaining to people why you love them, why you care for them. I tell a lot of residents when I leave, oh, goodbye. Thank you so much. I enjoyed this time with you. I love you, because I do. Because I love every resident that I get to work with. So that's a big thing. Words of affirmation. You did a great job. Thank you. I couldn't have done this without you. And when you hear those words, when a resident is saying thank you with, they're not being prompted, that is them using a love language to try and communicate with you. When you get this, there's a link. You can take the love languages quiz if you want, find out what your person's love languages are. We usually act primarily out of 2, but we need all 5 to thrive. And go ahead, it'll come with this PowerPoint presentation that can be emailed out to you. So thank you guys so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. I'm going to open, I know it's 2 o'clock and a lot of people are like, oh, I got to go. But if anybody has any questions, I would love to hear them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tricia. That was fantastic. There is actually one question in the chat box, if you wouldn't mind taking a peek at that one. And I know it's from a few slides prior to this. It was where I lost it now. I had it a second ago. Sorry, I just have to go and find it. Will this affect their annual cognitive screen? So quiz pattern questions.
I'm not 100% I understand the question.
So Lakshmi put that in. If you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself, and you can probably ask that question a lot better than me reading it.
Hello, everyone.
I'm also trying to find the chat box. My screen won't let me in. Here we go.
Hi, do you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Tricia, nice presentation. I should thank you for that. It really helped me to really revisit all those language that we use in dementia care. I just had a question. Like, I do remember when you were talking about like asking questions could be a little hard on them, like quiz pattern questions, right? So I was wondering, like, so many screening questionnaires are all going to be like question based, and we cannot even help them with any cueing, and we just are not mean to them, but we just say, hey, I cannot help you, but you need to really focus and like get all the information, and then you have to like give the answer, right? So I was just wondering, like, those screens can be invalid if this is going to make them like have that stress while answering, right? So
it can, it absolutely can. You're 100% right. I mean, I even think about, when my daughter, who's 12, is getting stressed about taking a test the next day at school. She might know all that information, but just the fact that she's going through a test, or the fact that you're being screened, it causes, again, that cortisol to flood your brain, and you're not able to get rid of it and relax and give the right answers. So it can definitely skew the results. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of great screening out there. So, I mean, I guess we have to use what we have. And that's sort of my thought on it. Just sort of work the best we can when we're using the screening tools, and know that they can be, skewed just by the situation.
I think that's right. We have to manage with what we have. Probably we can develop some tools in the future.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Before I go on to the other questions that are in the chat box, I wanted to let you know that yes, I will be emailing the PowerPoint and the cue cards out. But I did notice with some of our participants that you haven't been registered. So I'm going to put my email address in the box. So if you can let me know, because again, that would be the only way I can send out the information to you is if I have actually have you registered with FCSS, but you can do that through me. So the next question is with Carmen. Do you recommend playing music at mealtime, or is this a distraction?
No, for most people, I found that it's very helpful. A lot of time, I always say we focus so much on how people eat in like a care facility and what they eat. You know, their diet is very guided. If it's minced, if it's pureed, but we don't spend a lot of time thinking about the environment and where they're eating. Music is amazing. And there's general music that almost everybody likes. If you find it's distracting or upsetting, then you can always turn it off, right? Trial and error. If you try something and it's working, go for it. If you try something and it's not working, just change it. There's not going to be any permanent damage by playing music at one meal time if they're not going to like it. But yes, I always think there should be music. Have Google playing. Google Homes are so cheap right now. They're like $40. And you can ask Google to play any song and the staff get into it and they like the music. It's amazing how many times I'm playing music for someone, even at lunch, and then the staff starts singing along. Just that whole fun, loving environment. Music is amazing.
Great. Next one is with Lisa. We have a resident who will frequently say, I want to go home, and get weepy, and attempts to enter her reality, talk to her about home, family, or ask what she's missing have not helped pull her out of that. Any other suggestions on how we can help her get to a content emotional place when she is so fixated on wanting to go home?
And this happens a lot. And, you know, the one thing I always say is I can give as much information as I have. And there still will be some people that unfortunately it's not going to relax or soothe them. One of the first things I do when I have a resident that's like, I want to go home, and they're upset, I ask them, is there something you need to do at home, or do you just want to be there? Because what I'm trying to do is find that unmet need for them, why they're needing to go home. So is there something they have to do? I had one lady who kept yelling out, take me home, take me home. I said, you know, is there something you need to do there? You just want to be there. And she goes, I don't know, but if we pass a bathroom on the way, we're going to stop. So immediately I knew that she was calling out because she had to go to the bathroom at that certain time. If they just want to be there, then I know that it's probably comfort is their unmet need. So I might be talking to family and finding out, you know, what things comfort your mom. Are there things that you can bring from her home that might help that I can bring out? A lot of times if someone's, you know, I need to go home, I'll sort of walk with them and we'll go into their room and I'll start pointing out objects that have obvious emotional attachment. So I can tell if, you know, it's a painting. Did you paint this? And then they'll start talking about the painting. And sometimes it's just doing whatever we can to offer comfort. Again, I know that's not always the greatest answer, but when you're working with dementia, sometimes things work amazingly. Sometimes they don't work for that person, but just trying to find out when they're asking for home, what their unmet need is, if it's physical, if it's comfort, if, you know, something along those lines. You're always welcome to call me or email me, and we can go through that specific person and see if there's anything that we can pick out that might help them as well.
And this is to answer to add to what you had commented with Lisa's question. Hi, Lisa. We have always tried to give them some tangible candy or snack, give our hands to hold, a warm blanket, which really distracts. She usually gets distracted, but on some occasions, yes, it is really hard to divert.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's just that comfort of needing to be with another person.
If anyone else has any questions, you actually are more than welcome to unmute yourself to ask that question as well. Or if you're more comfortable having me read it, that works as well. And yes, there will be a recorded version of this. I am recording each week. And once it's put on, we will also send that out, and you're welcome to share that with family and friends or colleagues, whatever you would like, if they would like to be able to watch the weekly sessions that Tricia is doing for us. So any other questions, anyone? Or comments, stories? I'm trying to give the 10 seconds, but this uncomfortable silence.
It is. It's
killing me.
very hard.
Hi, Ellen and Tricia, it's Lisa. I have a group with me here in the library in Drumheller, and we were wondering
if they are not at the stage where they're recognizing they're having issues yet.
yeah, they're wondering if they're not at the stage, or they're not at the stage where they're recognizing that they have issues or not accepting yet.
Very interesting. I'm not quite sure what you're asking, or like how to communicate with them.
Yes, how to communicate in that
Okay.
situation. Yes, thank you.
It's going to be really, really hard because they're not, the problem in their mind is you, it's not them. So when you have, say, 5 people who are early stage dementia, you're going to have 2 people that have, you're going to have 3 people that have no clue what's going on whatsoever. They're completely oblivious to that. You're going to have 1 person that is aware and is going to try and hide things. They're going to be the people that are really good at, post-it notes, writing themselves notes, trying to keep their memory. And then you're going to have 1 of those 5 people who will actually discuss that with you. I think I'm having memory issues. So for the 3 people that have 0 cognitive awareness, it is really going to be a challenge, and it's going to have to be based on who that person is, because different people are going to respond differently. A man will obviously respond differently than a woman. If you take 2 men, one who's very easygoing or one who kind of, has been a little bit more abrasive his whole life, they're going to, hear and see things differently. They're going to respond to you differently. What I would need to give you better answers is an actual scenario.
Why?
This fellow is doing house renovations, and he's confused. He's confused about
Why in the middle of the job?
why in the middle of the job
His house is torn apart.
his house is kind of drawn apart.
Okay, is he physically doing the house renovations, or someone else is doing it and he's having a hard time understanding?
He's helping,
He's helping.
but they'll take down, say, the siding and take down the mailbox, and then he'll put the mailbox back up. And then they have to take the mailbox off again and then put up the paper wrap. And then he puts the mailbox back up again. Like the mailbox goes here. Like, why do you keep taking the mailbox up? The mailbox has to go on my house.
Can you hear her, Trish?
I'm catching little words.
Okay,
Little bit.
so
So
go ahead.
okay, if I'm hearing her right, so something like with the mailbox, they take the mailbox off and then he keeps putting it back on. Okay. Who is this causing an issue for?
He doesn't understand why they keep moving his mailbox.
The
Why
fa-
they keep taking it away.
The fellow doesn't understand why they keep taking his mailbox away when they're working
Okay.
on the renovation.
So he's taken
Okay.
to hiding it.
So sorry,
He's taken to hiding it.
he's taken to hiding it.
Okay, so very classic, right? Because he doesn't know why people are stealing his mailbox. So he's going to start hiding things from them so that it doesn't get stolen again and they don't take it down. He's never actually probably going to realize that it's because of house renovations. So if he had someone that was there with him, they would be able to guide him, but they'd have to be there with him all the time. Does he live alone?
Yes.
Okay, he's living alone. Is there somewhere like he could go and stay while they're doing the renovations?
He wouldn't be.
No, he wouldn't be able to.
Okay. Is that I would maybe leave a sign that describes, so, you know, where the mailbox is, something like a sign that says, the mailbox is being fixed. It will be put up, you know, on whatever day they're putting it up, depending on where his memory's at. It will be put up again tomorrow, because it's always tomorrow, depending on the progression of his disease. So notes like that could possibly help. Notes, you know, in his bathroom mirror. So when he wakes up in the morning, house renovations are happening, so that he's not, you know, thrown off when he goes downstairs. Things like that. More than happy, give me a phone call and we can go over all of these scenarios and some things to try. There's never going to be one magic fix, but I might have things we can try.
Great, thank you. I'll provide your information to her. Thanks, Tricia.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, I think we'll leave that for today. Thank you so much, Tricia. That was fantastic.
Thank you guys. Thanks everyone that came.
And I'm looking forward to next week's session. I'm sorry, I'm just, I can never remember the name sometimes. So next week, we're starting again at 1 o'clock next Friday, and that is on September the 24th. And Tricia will be talking about dementia and everyday skills. So I hope that you will all be able to come and join us again next week. And we'll see you all then, and have a lovely weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.